everyone, and welcome to my publication day live. This is a special live to celebrate the publication of my new book, Falling in Love at Nightingale Farm. It is out today and available in ebook and paperback formats from Amazon. I'm joined today by the lovely Genevieve from her channel, My Complicated Life. Genevieve is an author and also an editor, and I believe you do transcription and formatting and basically everything that any author could need.
Well, it's changing a little bit actually, but
Oh, so tell us about the changes.
Well, taking off of the formatting and cover design that I used to do, and I'm kind of, I want to say, narrowing down my niche to put it in an interesting way, where I'm going to only offer developmental and line editing.
Brilliant. And is that because that's kind of what you enjoy the most?
It's partially that. It's partially also because of economical issues, which basically means I have to get a second job.
Sure.
And so it's easier for me to do the developmental and the line editing only versus, also proofreading and all that stuff. So.
Oh, awesome. Well done. I see we've been joined by the lovely Nadim. Nadim has come to quite a few of my lives before, and his dad has read my book, The Green Hills of Home, which is really lovely. And he's saying congratulations and that the cover of the book is amazing. Yeah, I think my publishers have done a particularly good job with the cover of this one. I like the way they've kind of they've used the seasons for quite a few of my books, and obviously this one's quite spring-like, so that's great. And also the lovely Katie Elizabeth is here. Thank you, Katie Elizabeth, for joining us. That's awesome. I've got quite a few questions. I put a call out on social media to get some questions, and I've had some. There's a couple that I'm a little bit scared of because they're a little tricky and quite intense. There's one in particular that I really like, and the thing is, I know the person who put this question, and this is exactly the kind of thing that she'd like to know, because she really does. She has a YouTube channel. Her name's Jo Wright is her YouTube channel, and it's brilliant. But she really likes to delve into like the intricacies of writing itself. And yeah, this question scares me, but yeah, I'll have to see how I do.
I'm sure you'll be able to answer it fine.
I really can't, but we'll see if I can cover that up. We've also got Bonnie from Corner 23 is here and saying congratulations. So thank you very much. And obviously, if anybody has some other questions, either for me or for Genevieve about her own books or about the services that she offers to authors, then just pop those in the chat and we will we'll get round to them, I'm sure. And I'm hoping that quite a few of these you will be able to answer as well, Genevieve. So the first one is one, I'm hoping that you'll be able to answer this.
Well, we'll try.
This is a nice one. So the first one is, have you got any more books being published this year? So would you like to go first, Genevieve?
Sure. Full books, probably not, because I still have one I'm basically just starting, so it's not even close to done. But I am, and I actually haven't announced this yet, so I guess you guys are going to be the first ones to I am going to be putting some stories in Kindle Vela, which, if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's basically sharing a book episode by episode, which basically means chapter by chapter.
Oh, I'm so jealous. We don't have that in the UK yet.
I hope it comes soon.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will, because you've had it in the US for like a year or more now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it looks like really good.
One of my editing clients does it, and as I've been editing the way that she's been posting them. And I just love doing it that way, because like at the end of every episode is like a small cliffhanger, so your brain says, I want more, I want more, I want more.
Yeah, I think it's a very particular type of writing, because although, when we're writing books, obviously, we want the reader to continue reading, and so you do try to have a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, but they literally just have to turn a page. It's like,
right,
they're not going to give up ideally if it's not the most don don don, whereas with that kind of publishing, you really do want them to come back for more, don't you?
yeah. Well, and the good thing is that the first 3 episodes of any story are free.
Brilliant.
So if you're not hooked by the 3rd episode, you don't have to spend the money to continue.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Which also means the writer has to make sure the first 3 episodes are the strongest part.
Oh, yeah. You have to make sure those are really, really good, especially because I think a lot of people are getting onto it. And so there's increasingly more competition. Yeah. Compared to like a year ago. If you do hear a tingling of a bell, it is Genevieve's beautiful black cat. It's not something going wrong with your computer.
No. He was on my lap, but he decided to move to the footstool, so he should be fine.
Oh. As for me, have I got any more books being published this year? I am really hoping so. Nothing is definite at the moment. I got the rights back to my book from some previous publishers, which I left last year, and it's Her Sister's Baby. This one's called. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that yet, but I would hope that would be republished this year, either by my current publishers or another publishers or self-publishing, something like that. And I would hope to have at least one more romance out, possibly Center Stage, the book that I did the first draft of for Nanowrimo. And I'd also ideally like to have a children's book out, but that one's more complicated because of needing illustrations. And that kind of isn't the priority at the moment. It's like the romances, which are the priority. So we just have to
children's book, would you do the children's book through the same publisher, or would you do that self-published?
No, they don't publish children's books. It's so difficult to get children's books published by a publisher because most of them want you to go through an agent. So you have to get an agent first, and it's really competitive. My first children's book, I did self-publish, and it was incredibly hard work. It really, really was. I mean, more so for my illustrator, who's my friend Caroline, than for me. But yeah, it was just so much hard work, so tricky to do the formatting and to get it looking right, because it was quite a fancy looking book with very complicated pictures.
I've worked on a couple of children's books for clients, and believe me, I know.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And you're a professional and you're saying that it's not easy. So for an amateur, it's really not. So yeah. I mean, I don't think that my friend's in a position at the moment to do the illustrations for another one anyway. So I'd probably have to find another illustrator. So I don't know. It's something that I'm mulling over, is what I'm doing.
Well, maybe you could at least get the first draft done this year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The thing is, with like children's picture books, it's actually writing the story that's the relatively easy part. If you've got a good idea and you know what you're doing, it's not that difficult. I mean, obviously you have to be, every word has to be, just right when you've got a book that's that short. But compared to writing a full-length novel, or compared to doing the illustrations for something like that, it's actually the kind of easiest part. So yeah, we'll have to see, but it would be nice to do something there. Yeah. Right, well, let's see what is the next question. So the next question is, was this book what you wrote during NaNoWriMo, or is that an even newer one? So Genevieve, you didn't do NaNoWriMo this year, did you? No, you didn't. Have you done it before?
Once, and I extremely failed at it.
I
wrote for maybe the first week, and then I gave up.
Well, the thing is, if it goes wrong for people, it tends to go like spectacularly wrong. I cannot possibly make my way back from this because of whatever mitigating factors. And so,
I kind of feel NaNoWriMo is a bit too much pressure for me.
Sure.
I mean, kudos to anybody who can do it in a month, but for me, it's just too much pressure, and then that makes me not want to continue.
Yeah, sure. If it's not fun. I actually found it fun because I'd never done it before, and I did kind of set things up very well. You know, I'm lucky in that I don't really have like a second job or anything like that, so I was able to devote myself to it. My kids aren't little anymore, so you know they don't need me like all the time like they did, and they and my husband kind of got the shopping in each week and stuff like that, which saves some time so that I could do the writing. So it kind of worked. But yeah, it's a big undertaking. It really is.
Well, and I also don't plot when I write.
Right.
So although I
Yeah.
have started having to do a little plotting with the Vela story, because
Mhm.
you kind of have to know what's going to happen, because
Sure.
you don't want to post and then not be able to finish, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I just write and then I fix it later. So Nano doesn't really work for me.
No, it wouldn't work. I thought I was a complete plotter, but actually when I started writing that quickly, I discovered I'm not as much of a plotter as I thought I was, because I just hadn't put it in enough detail in my plan at all. And I'd be like, I don't really know what happens here. And then it would start veering off in some bizarre direction.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, what's happened here? Like, this character would not do this. Like, this is not supposed to happen. Like, bring it back. Like, you know, and kind of work it out. So it's tricky. But going back to the question, no, this book isn't the one which I wrote during NaNoWriMo. During NaNoWriMo, you just write the first draft of a book, and a draft generally needs a lot of working on. You usually have quite a few drafts. And because this one was bought out by my publisher as well, it then takes the publisher quite a while, not just to do all the editing and the copy editing and the proofreading and everything, but also they have to decide the best time for your book to be released, both for the book sales, but also to fit in with the other releases that they have going. This is actually a book which I finished early last year, and the contract for this was signed in June last year. And so what they wanted to do was they wanted to release the other 4 books which had previously been published first as kind of a build up to this release. And they came out November. I think maybe one was at the end of October, but basically November and December. And now this is like the big new release with them. But hopefully Center Stage, the book that I was working on for NaNoWriMo, will be out later this year.
And I didn't say this at the beginning, but just so anybody, if they haven't read it yet, it's a very good book. I loved
it. Thank you. That's very kind.
I still have like the last 2 chapters to finish, but everything else I've read up to that, I loved.
Good. Did you like the lambs, my little baby lambs?
I loved everything about it. And you know what? I actually grew up in a farming community, so it was kind of nostalgic for me.
Well, with the scene, there's a scene where there are twin lambs which are born, and I wrote it and then I sent it to a friend of mine because she's actually been helping during lambing for the last couple of years on some farms. I sent it to her and she basically sent it back going, no. Okay, this is like, that would never happen. That would never happen. That would never happen. You've made it like way too twee, you know. There needs to be more kind of blood and guts and change it.
Yeah, I just loved everything about it. And actually, one of the questions I had for you was, what made you come up with the idea? Because like you got the farm aspect, but then you have this person who helps businesses get back on their feet. And it's something I haven't really seen done before in a plot. So I was curious how you came up with it.
Oh, well, I wanted my main character, Polly, to be at a bit of a crossroads in her life and to be in a position where she really didn't know what she was going to do. At the beginning of the book, she doesn't have a job. She's pretty miserable overall. She's not really getting along with her family very much. And she's really having a bit of a crisis. She does not know what to do. And she ends up, through her mum's meddling, going along to this farm. Her mum doesn't realize that she's lost her job, and sends her along thinking that she might be able to help, because Polly's old job was helping struggling businesses. So Polly goes along to be polite, but ends up being completely charmed. I love the idea of a city girl going along to, to a muddy, grubby farmyard in the high heels, and being told by her mum that she needs to go and help out. And she literally has no idea whatsoever anything about farming, no idea how to run a farm, but she's just completely charmed by the guy that owns this farm, and he's in real trouble, and she just wants to help him. And it's almost like she's putting aside her own problems that she can't deal with to try and help this person who she doesn't really know very much, but she just has an instant connection with. And I just thought that would make a really lovely story.
I gotta say, the parts where she has trouble are the best parts, in my opinion, because even the part, I don't want to give too much away, but even the part where the electricity goes out, she's there the first time, that was like so hilarious.
Yeah, I really enjoyed writing that part. I kind of tried to put myself in that situation, if you like, and how I would feel. I mean, I grew up in London, but I don't really see myself as a city girl anymore. Like, I've lived in a pretty rural community for a very long time now, but still I wouldn't be happy in the situation that she was in. And so I kind of tried to look at it from my point of view, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. We have been joined as well by the lovely Laura Nettles. So hi Laura, thank you so much for joining us. And also by Meredith from Create with Mer, who says, so exciting, wonderful job on publishing, and the cover is really stunning. Thank you so much. Let's have a look and see where we are with these questions. Right. So which of your characters do you relate to the most, and why? Oh, I don't know if that's the characters in this book or all my characters. I don't know. Is it just me?
How about a two-part answer?
Two-part answer. Is it just me, or do you kind of forget some of your characters? Like a few years of, completely. And people are asking you about a book because they've read it, and you're like, I'm sorry, like I honestly can't remember like the name of.
Yeah, some of them stick with you more than others, that's for sure.
Yeah, like, well, I did have I had one character, Bronte, from my book. It was her. Yeah, it is her perfect hero. It was I Need a Hero. Now it's her perfect hero. And she's a writer. She writes romance. So I suppose I do relate to her quite a bit. And also, I guess Polly from Falling in Love at Nightingale Farm, in that, I did grow up in London. And although, I have the proper Wellington boots and everything now, and I'm well used to trudging through mud, it did take me quite a while to get used to that, and to smelly animal smells. We actually lived on a farm for a couple of years, and I didn't really deal with the smelly animal smells very well at times there, and random sheep and goats getting into the garden and things like that. So I suppose there is an element of Polly there. Are there any of your characters that you relate to, do you think?
I think pretty much all of my characters have a little bit of me in them. Which, I mean, most authors do that. But one of my really older books called Novel Desire, she's a writer, of course. But
it's hard, isn't it? It's hard not to make them all writers just because that's what we know. And you're like, well, that's the best profession. Why would anybody else want to be anything other than a writer? Like,
I kind of wrote it as a kind of a healing book for myself, because when I was in school, I was bullied and everything. So I made it where she went back after she was successful. She went back to speak to her high school, and she reconnected with some people, and they apologized and all that stuff. So it was kind of a healing story for me personally. So I feel like maybe I connect to her more than the rest.
Oh, that's lovely. What a lovely kind of healing thing for you to do as well, to kind of be able to write that and have it out there. Oh, that's lovely.
It really helped me kind of move on from,
Sure.
everything I experienced in high school. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Right. So the next question is, who's your favorite character, and or which character do you think readers will like the most? I do love my hero in Nightingale Farm. His name is Mark, because he's all kind of tall and grumpy and broody. But I love his dad, John, even more. John is just really sweet. Yeah, he's a widower, and he's been struggling to try to keep the family farm at least turning over, even if not really making money. And he's had a terrible time of it. And he's just so sweet and welcoming to Polly, and puts up with his grumpy son all the time. And I think I like him best. He's just so sweet. Did you like John?
I did, yes, he was my favorite too. And I kind of like the way that like all of Mark's gruffiness and everything just kind of disappeared when it came to his dad.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
his dad could just say one thing to him and he'd just be like, okay, whatever, and then lets it go and walks away.
Fine, yeah. It's like, that's dad. And his dad's just like, will you stop? Will you stop, you two? Like,
And I really liked how Mark was, a lot of his dialogue was in grunts.
yeah. Oh, like, city woman. And Katie Elizabeth has also commented that that she loves John as well, in capitals, which must really, really mean that she loves him. So I like that. It was nice to write. Next one is, were there any challenges in writing this book? I think this was actually quite an easy one to write. I have definitely got more organized with my writing, and so I always write chronologically, which makes things a lot easier at the end. I do have a habit of having a particularly interesting scene in my head and wanting to write it straight away. And that's what I used to do with my first couple of books. I used to do that, but it just caused so much trouble with editing. It was ridiculous. It used to take me so long to edit. So now if I really have to write something down, I'll kind of make a note of it in my notebook, but I won't actually put it in the main document. I'll add it in when it's time. I've got a dog here who wants to go into the kitchen. I have no idea why. Hector, why do you want to go in the kitchen? You go and make yourself a cup of tea? Just looking at me like there's clearly something. No, I'll get somebody to come and let him in. Maybe he wants to go out. Oh, great. Now the other dog's come in to see what's going on. Fantastic. So, yeah, there weren't too many challenges, I don't think, apart from kind of finding out about the farming aspects that I didn't know already. But luckily, I had plenty of friends available who would help me with that.
Well, I can tell you that I grew up in a town where we like to say that the cows outnumber the people.
Yeah, the
so
sheep
I can tell you,
people.
I really felt like I was back home.
Oh, good. And then the next one is, what was your inspiration for the story? Well, I think we kind of touched on this earlier, didn't we? Just, yeah, it was kind of, yeah. It was the situation that Polly found herself in. The fact that she'd lost her job, but she doesn't want to tell anybody because she's so embarrassed. She's made a big deal out of the fact that she's got this, amazing job, that that's brilliant and everything, and then she's fired through. Well, she's not fired. She's made redundant. It's not her fault. It's just kind of last in, first out. But she's really embarrassed. She doesn't want to tell anybody, and she's just desperately trying to sort herself out without her family finding out. And then, yeah, to kind of connect with John at the farm and to kind of be trying to help him. I just thought that was a really interesting connection that could be made there. This is the tricky one. This is the stinker of a question, and I will never forgive Joe for this. So she says, how do you balance the different stages of love and relationships in your stories? Can you share an example from your latest book of how you blended different stages together? Isn't that a stinker?
Yeah, that's intense.
I know. Okay, I'll answer it first, but then you get to answer the first half of it at least, okay? But I will give you time to try and formulate an answer. Okay, how do you balance the different stages of love and relationships? I guess I spend a lot of time daydreaming about my characters and about my stories, but in particular, the actual romantic elements of them. I am an absolute romantic at heart, and I just love to see the connection between people and how it can grow romantically. Now, sometimes you'll have more of a kind of instant attraction on on both parts, and that's kind of interesting as well. But other times, like in the Hating Game, I absolutely love that book. I read it last year and it was one of my top reads. The characters in that have both hated each other for so long, and then that hate kind of turns into love, or maybe it was love to begin with, and the two are very closely connected. But I love to imagine in my mind the meeting and then how it would slowly develop. So with Polly and Mark, she turns up at the farm and she messes up straight away. He's already in a terrible mood. He's really struggling in his life. He's got a lot of problems, including that the family farm is, going to be repossessed soon if they don't do something. And he's got this city girl coming along, making a mess of his yard and, attempting to charge them for services that he doesn't think that she's going to be able to do, and generally interfering. So she really has to win him over, and she needs to do that because she wants to help his dad, and she can't do that if she's got the son, constantly going against her. So she's trying to be nice and to win him over, but he's so prickly, and that's what I really like is how prickly he is. And she's kind of trying to make sure that he understands that she's only trying to help, and she's not trying to just interfere and destroy. He has a separate business, and he's worried that she's going to kind of interfere with that, and she doesn't want to do that. There is some cider, which definitely helps with the two of them, and I like that scene. But yeah, it really is just imagining it is the best way that I can. Well,
if I can add a little something to that for you, I think when it comes to romance, one of the really important things is establishing the trope. Because once you know the trope, you kind of know like the points you have to hit. So it's really for other genres, you don't necessarily have to have a trope, but for romance, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important. And I think, I think we don't realize that we naturally hit story beats, as they're known. If you're any good at telling a story, you will naturally hit most of those beats anyway when you're telling a story. But it is really, really handy to have a book like Saves the Cat or Romancing the Beat. Those are both really, really good for this kind of thing, so that you can make sure that that you're hitting those things, that you've got them meeting at the right time, that you got, depending on the trope, whether there's like an instant attraction, whether one of them likes each other, and where that goes with it. And that is very, very helpful. Yeah.
Yours is like a grumpy sunshine kind of trope. And so you have to make sure you have all those moments where they're not exactly nice to each other, but they're not mean either, like enemies to lovers. So
yeah, definitely. Right, I'm moving on from that, because that was oh, I'm sorry, I didn't properly give you a chance. Did you want to add anything else?
Honestly, I mean, my answer basically is the tropes, because if you don't have the trope, you're kind of writing out of order, and it just becomes chaos because you don't have something, because the trope kind of helps you focus in on what you need to include. Whereas if you don't have that, you're just kind of writing love, I mean, it's a love story regardless, because once there's love in it, it's a love story. But you have to get from point A to point B. Like, you can't have them say I love you on page 2.
Yeah. Although actually I have seen some very good books where there is like a proper intense love relationship very early.
Well, and that's the thing. It's
That
because
then
it's
goes
the
wrong.
insta love trope. So
yeah, and that can be done very well. Yeah, absolutely. So the next question: dealing with unproductive days. How? I think we all have days when we just can't be bothered, don't we? You know, when you think, I don't want to write anything, like, and it depends, I think, what stage you're at in a manuscript, because there are times when I will just be like, okay, you know, I don't have to write today, and I don't feel like it. I've got plenty of other things to do, so I just won't. But there are other times when you kind of do, you know, like obviously if you've got edits that you need to get back to your publisher or to your editor or something, well, you kind of just have to like suck it up, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
So one of my things, excuse me, one of my things I was going to say is actually having a loose deadline in mind helps, because then you can say, well, if it's a 50,000 word story and I have this loose deadline of when I want to finish it, then you know how much you have to write each day, which is kind of what NaNoWriMo is, basically.
Yeah.
But if you know how much you have to have each day and you don't write in a day, which, first of all, make sure you tell yourself it's okay not to write. It's okay to have an unproductive day. You don't have to, you know, burn yourself out just to write a book.
Yeah.
But if you have an unproductive day, you can say, well, okay, I was supposed to get, like, for example, 300 words today. I didn't get my 300 words, so I have to spread it out throughout the rest of the days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you just got to be aware that, yeah, if you've got something needs to be done at a certain time, yeah, okay, you take the day off today, but then you just got to do a bit more tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are times when I really do kind of push through if I'm feeling unproductive, because, you know, I know that I'll appreciate it later. And there isn't any reason, you know, it's not that I'm burnt out or anything. I'm just being lazy. So I think that there is definitely a difference between being like, between being completely burnt out and just not wanting to do it just because you're being lazy. And it's knowing which of those it is. Is important. Right, so the next question is, will you stop it? He's not crying, he's just, it's the way he talks to me. He just he's the weirdest dog. No wonder he was given up for adoption. Anyway, how many drafts do you write before submitting is the next question. Would you like to take this one first, Genevieve?
Well, I'm completely self-published, so it depends on when I'm happy with it.
Sure.
There's been ones where I've written one draft and then just sent it to an editor. There's been ones where I've written, you know, 10 drafts and still wasn't happy with it. And there's been ones I've given up. So
yeah. I don't know if I've ever really counted, to be honest. I mean, it must be at least 3.
Well, I guess it depends on what you consider a draft too, because personally for me, a draft is writing it start to finish.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, what I do is I do a first draft as long as I'm happy with it, because there have been some restarts, and then go into editing. But for me, that's not another draft, in my opinion. So
yeah, sure.
I guess most of the time it's one draft.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think I'd consider the first draft to be, you know, completely from start to finish, like 95% of the book there. Like there might be like a little scene or two that you add in later, but basically like it's there. And then the second draft would be adding in the extra bits, maybe.
Yeah, and I guess I feel like if it's, like you said, like mostly complete, then that's a draft. Whereas like one of my books in the past called The Shift, I had written and left big gaps in between things. I just basically wrote what I knew.
Yeah.
And for me, that's not a complete draft. So I guess technically when I went back and added those gaps, that would make it a second draft, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I see your point. It is difficult. I mean, I guess if a draft is, you're counting it as going through the book and making improvements from start to finish. After the first draft is all of the story, or 95% of it. Then each draft after that is kind of going through the whole manuscript and adding, making corrections and everything. Then I guess about 3 or 4 for me.
It really depends on the author and the genre too,
Yeah.
because I know some authors who write fantasy and they're still on like their 40th draft or something like that.
No,
So
absolutely. But I mean, some of those books are just crazy long. I mean, I can't imagine writing, a book that's like 120,000 words or something insane like that. It's like,
I can barely get to the 50,000.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Completely. The next question is, from first draft to publish, how long? So again, this really depends. Because I'm a hybrid author, I self-publish and I'm traditionally published as well. So it depends. Like with this book, for example, it was a long time because it's traditionally published and because my publishers had other books of mine that they wanted to release first. So it took me quite a long time to write it, but that was just because I was doing a lot of other things as well. It wasn't that I was doing, like a million drafts, and I wasn't spending 8 hours a day writing on it for a year or anything like that. But it probably took about a year to write it in total. And then then I submitted it to my publishers. They accepted it quickly. So it's probably been about 20 months, something like 21 months, I guess. I think. What about you? Because you're self-published, do you, you can do it so much quicker if you choose to, can't you?
I mean, if we're talking to the beginning of my career, I had the bad habit of just kind of finishing it and hitting publish, which I now know is a bad idea.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, it maybe, again, it depends. It depends on the book. But I'd say about a year probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't published anything in like 5 years, but when I was writing regularly, I would say probably about a year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reading a book at the moment, which is called Rapid Release. And it is all about rapid release strategies and how they can work. And, there are authors there that will release like a book a month, and they will be writing like a book a month practically as well. Now, to me, that's just completely insane.
Well, like one of our fellow author tubers, Sarah Sutton, she works on a book, sends it to her editor, and then while the editor has it, she works on the next book in the series. And so she has like 4 books going at once, so she can just publish when they're done.
Sure. I think my mind would just go completely just bonkers if I tried to do that, to be honest. But she's young. There we go. She's younger than me. She can manage it. And the last question that we have today is, where do you get your ideas from, or the ideas from? And do you want to take this one first?
I mean, it depends on the book, but I mean, there's been stories that came from dreams. There's been stories, like I said, that came from real life, loosely. There's been some, like I have a North Pole series, which is about Santa and his children. It's a romance series, which that was at the beginning of my career, so it's not the greatest. But I just really like Christmas, and I'm one of those adults who still believes in Santa, so it kind of stemmed from that. So because the first book is about Santa's son and finding the woman he loves. So the ideas come from everywhere, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can come from a TV show. I mean,
yeah, it really is. It's just a lot of it for me is dreams. Definitely, I have dreams about it, or you kind of read something, a story, something that you experience. When I was at the Romantic Novelists Association conference last year, and it took place at a university, and there was another group who were also staying at the university, and it was a group of footballers, and they were probably like in their 20s. but at breakfast one morning, like we came down for breakfast and we're sitting down, and there were just all of these rather, good looking men all lined up to have breakfast with us. And half of our big table were romantic novelists and the other half of these footballers. And they were so sweet. And they were like, so how do you write a novel? And we were all chatting away. And I think like everybody left that conference going, okay, so I now need to write a romantic comedy where there's a conference with romantic novelists and some footballers come and like gate crash it, and this is what happens. I don't know if anybody actually has gone and written that yet, but all of us were just talking at dinner that night like, okay, it's just basically it's the first one to do it, isn't it? Like this thing is practically writing itself now. This would be amazing. And so yeah, it just really, really depends, doesn't it? And what you're interested in, like you say, you love Christmas, so it's quite natural for you to want to write Christmas books, which are incredibly popular, aren't they? So it's it's not a bad idea to write a Christmas book. People do love them. So it completely just depends. But for me, as a romance writer, it's always the relationship that is the absolute core and the most important thing of the book. I've got a friend who said that she thinks that any romantic element of a book is just like completely pointless. She doesn't get it. It does not only does it do nothing for her, but it actually takes away from the storyline of the book. And I was thinking that no, like for me, that's the most important part.
There's obviously books out there that don't need it, but
yeah.
I mean, if we're talking a romance novel, then what is left?
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But in any book, to me, like I just love the romantic element.
I do have to admit, I do too, because like even TV shows stuff, you're like, oh well, they would make a cute couple, and
yeah. Like the Office, for example. I watched the US version of The Office for the first time last year, and it was really funny. I love Michael Scott, but it was Pam and Jim. I wanted Pam and Jim to get together. That was the
pretty
main
much
thing for me.
Everybody I know who watched that show says the same thing.
Yeah. And we're all in love with Jim, let's face it. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me with this. Has been so fun, and I think we had a really nice selection of questions, although I will never forgive Jo for that particular question. That was an absolute stinker, and we will have to have our revenge on her if she ever does one of these, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with the hardest question possible.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about it now. I'll have a Word file open with just anything really mean that I can think of. Okay, thank you all so much for everybody who's joined today. I know that there are several people who are going to be catching this later because of the time, particularly in the East Coast of America. It's a little bit early for you guys, so hi to you if you're just catching this on the replay. I did want to do a little shout out. My friend Jessica Tesha, she has a YouTube channel, and her book Blind Fate is just out as well. I had the opportunity to read it before it was published, and it's a really, really fantastic romance, great setting, brilliant characters. It's about like this woman who comes up with an online dating app, and then she actually gets matched with her ex-boyfriend, and it's absolutely brilliant. So make sure that you check that one out as well. Although obviously, if you can only afford to buy one book this month, then buy mine, frankly. But if you can afford to buy two, then get Jessica's as well. Okay, well, thanks.
I'm looking for it right now.
Brilliant. It's really, really good.
I'm guessing it's that. Well, you can't really see it, but
yes, yeah, it's the blue one. Yep.
Okay, downloading.
Yay! Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me again, Genevieve. And I will be doing more lives later in the week. I've got some live streams doing writing and productivity sprints. So
yeah, and I wish you could be there, but because of the
I
time
know it's
difference.
never a good time for you, is it?
It's like
But,
5 o'clock in the morning for me.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, I would judge you if you got up that early and started writing, to be honest, anyway. Okay. Right. Well, let's say bye for now, and we will catch you again soon. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.